Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Andrew Gaffney. I'm Editorial Director with Demand Gen Report. Really glad you could join us today. ABM has been one of the hottest topics for us over the past year or two. We're hearing a lot of our readers that are really trying to transform their traditional demand gen approach to marketing, trying to get much more precise. One of the things that we're hearing is there's a lot of theory around ABM, but we're always hearing that the marketers are really trying to learn from other marketers that have already done it, have already had success, already had some learning. So on today's webinar, we're going to be talking about conversation changers, and we're going to look at 4 brands that have been driving real ABM results. We'd like to make this as interactive as possible. We'd love you to participate. Go ahead and share any of the case study findings that you see and like on social media. We would ask that you use the hashtag conversation changers. We'll be monitoring that. You'll also see the handles for a lot of the speakers and participants today if you want to include that. And again, we'll be monitoring and reposting and sharing some of the comments and things that we see on social. So let's try to be active on that as well. Today's session is being presented to you by Demand Gen Report. Hopefully you're all subscribers to Demand Gen Report. If you're not, we encourage you to take advantage of the great content that we produce. It's complimentary to B2B marketers. And then you'll also be hearing about a special edition of our new ABM in Action publication. We've launched that last year, and I've been getting great response to that. We really try to do a lot of what we're talking about today, where we present real-world case studies, looking at what actual practitioners are seeing, learning, so that it can be actionable takeaways for other B2B marketers. So please check out both of those. Also check us out on social media as well. Today's presentation will last around 30 or 40 minutes. We're going to have great case studies and hear from a number of different panelists. And then we're going to take your questions. So go ahead and type them in as they come to mind. We'll save the questions for the end. We'll save about 10 minutes for the end. You can type your questions right in the On24 platform in the Q&A question and answer tab. Also, there's a resource center where you'll be able to download a special edition of ABM in Action. I'll tell you more about that in a second. And you can also monitor social media right within the On24 platform as well. So definitely go ahead and type in your questions. If we don't get to them during the session, we'll ask our panelists to follow up with you directly. One of the frequently asked questions we get is the session being recorded? And yes, it is. You'll get, all registrants will get a link to go back and review it or share it with their peers. So you don't have to write down too frantic of notes. You'll be getting recording and reference to it as well. So I mentioned a lot of what we're going to be covering today. There was a special edition we did of ABM in Action where we covered some of the really most powerful case studies that we're seeing out there, what we think were really great learnings for other B2B marketers that are either in early stages of ABM or really trying to get to the next level. So we think these case studies are going to provide you a lot of different types of companies, but also different areas of expertise and focus for B2B marketers. So I think there's a lot to learn here. We're excited to bring those to you today. And again, you'll get a link to go and check out that special issue as well, so you can do a little more learning on it as well. Got a great panel today that's going to be joining me. I'm really excited to be hearing from these folks that are doing ABM, also going to be sharing some learnings, what they're seeing across other companies that are doing ABM. So I'm really glad to have David Schroeder from CallRail, one of the case studies that we'll be discussing today. David will be sharing some of his perspective. We got Calvina Chang from Inside View, who's going to build on some of the points that David will cover and also share some other expertise and findings that they're seeing at Inside View. We have Jesse Miller from Rollworks, who's going to be sharing some insights around advertising. We have Jesse Aris from Vidyard, and we'll be looking at different approaches and tactics. And then Sandra Freeman from Engagio is going to be looking at orchestration and measurement around ABM, and I have a great case study from ServiceMax. So really excited to go ahead and get started with today's presentation. First off, I wanted to turn it over to David from CallRail and ask David to give us some background on the case study and some of the work that they've done there.
Yeah, thanks so much, Andrew. So CallRail is a call tracking and marketing attribution platform that allows marketers to determine, where is their ad spend delivering quality leads and improve that marketing efficiency. And as a young company, we'd really entered into that hyper-growth phase, and we had seen incredible results from digital marketing, but we were looking to grow and expand, and that's really what led us into the world of data-driven marketing. It was at that point, we understood roughly that advertising agencies were really a strong vertical for us and a core market, and that's where we wanted to expand. But we really needed better data to go on, and we needed some way of validating that strategic approach. And that's when we partnered with Inside View. And it was by partnering with Inside View that we were able to determine that our target addressable market was actually 10 times the size that we had already captured. And that allowed us to dig into the geographic regions. It allowed us to dig into industry, sub-industry classifications. And it really allowed us to drive our strategy in a way that allowed us to improve our messaging. I mean, for us, I think the key takeaways were that we were able to see exactly who we were talking to in terms of job titles, location, and drill into their pain points. And I think for us, that was kind of a takeaway, is that a data-driven approach ended up in improving our messaging relevancy. And I don't know if that's counterintuitive or not, but by being able to see who we were talking to, we could dig in and understand what were their pain points and what were their real issues. And then we were able to focus on companies that were more like our best customers. And then we were able to prioritize the handling of those leads with our sales team. So the results, ultimately, at the end of the day, CallRail continues to grow today at about 50% year-over-year growth, as mandated by our board. And a lot of that is driven by our focus on the agency vertical. We've seen growth in that vertical. We've been able to fine-tune all of our messaging in that vertical to unique personas. And that is what's continued to drive our ongoing performance.
Awesome. Thank you, David, for giving us a quick snapshot of that. So, David, I'm asking you to come back in a little bit. I have a couple other points I want to follow up with you on, but thanks for walking us through that.
Thanks, Andrew.
Next, I want to turn to TransPay. I'm going to ask Jesse Miller from Rowux to give us a little bit more detail. David talked about targeting, which is obviously a key part of ABM. Jesse, I hope you could give us a little bit more background on TransPay approaches from using targeted ads.
Yeah. So let me take a few minutes here to talk about TransPay. First of all, they're a B2B cross-device payments platform, and so they operate internationally and globally. They came to us with a pretty clear definition of their target account list, the personas that they're going after. They knew their ICP, so they weren't new to ABM, but they had struggles in terms of getting the right folks to their website through the channels that they had been using. So they were using some traditional channels, and they had broad-based targeting. They were spending quite a bit of their budget on these target accounts, but they didn't really have a way to measure who was coming to the site. And so they came to Rollworks with a very clear goal of getting decision makers to their website and getting them there through very precision targeting. So they came to us, they were like, these are the personas we're going after, these are the functions within a business unit we're going after, and these are the products we're trying to offer them. And we were able to say, okay, we know this is the target account list. We put that in as an input. We know that there's certain firmographic and intent signals that they wanted to use to build these audience segments. And then we also knew that there's different messaging that they wanted to, send along to these target accounts so that they would be more likely to come over to the site. We were able to actually bring them on board within 2 weeks, onboard them and get some campaigns up and running. So they were able to target different functions and DMs within the same companies for multiple product lines. They're able to deliver the segmented messaging via the persona-based creative. And then they were able to actually measure and increase overall engagement with the target account list. So before, they were kind of using Google Analytics and several other tools to kind of understand which accounts were coming to the site, but it was a lot of manual work. We were actually able to surface exactly which accounts were coming to their site, and also, what they were doing. Were they clicking to the site? Which pages were they viewing? Was it the right people? We weren't able to necessarily say, was it the right person per se, but the results of these campaigns after about 2 months were pretty amazing. They were actually noticing about a 6x increase in time on site. And this is clearly due to the fact that they're driving the right people to their website versus people who would show up onto their website and be like, what is this? What is this company going to do for me? And they would probably just bounce right away. The other part that was pretty cool is they were actually able to decrease the cost per unique visitor by about 50% compared to other vendors that they had been using. And this is just because they were really focused and they were targeting the right accounts, the right segments. They had the messaging in place, and they weren't basically spending and kind of putting marketing dollars into a black hole or they were spending efficiently. Let's just put it that way. So it's pretty cool. Very similar use case that a lot of our customers have. They've tried many different channels, and they just couldn't really get to that really precision targeting to the point of like, I want to get in front of the CTO at company X, and I want to show them this specific ad and get them to go to this specific page. They weren't ever able to really get that granular. So that's why Rollworks was able to kind of come in and help. And it was really nice because TransPay came to us with a pretty solid strategy in place already. They knew exactly what they wanted. And so it was a matter of facilitating that partnership and kind of getting the campaigns up and running.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. So as you can see, these are really, two of the core building blocks of any successful ABM campaign. We talked at first about TAM and looking at the audience, making sure you had insights into reaching that audience. And then as Jesse covered, how do you effectively get in front of them with targeted ads, make sure you're doing an efficient spend. So I think those are two great case studies to look at. Now, next we want to look at, once you have some initial reach in front of those audience and you really want to be efficient and effective in terms of engaging them, what are some of the tactics? So one of the other case studies we had in the issue was AlayaCare. And I wanted to ask Jesse Aris from Vidyard to give us a little bit more background about what they were trying to accomplish and some of the learnings that they had.
Yeah, thank you so much. This one's a really, really fun story. The situation was that AlayaCare, and specifically the new demand generation person who started there, came into this role, and maybe this sounds familiar to you on the line, came into this role and was given this database of 19,000 email addresses. This is it. This is our leads. This is what we've got. But what's the immediate next step that you do? How do you qualify those leads? How do you, you don't really know how good they are, how hot they are, what they're worth. So what he did, and you can read the full story later, I can send you the case study, or I can introduce you if you'd like to this gentleman, because it's a really great story. He created a HubSpot program with video and personalized video as well into his outreach. So if you're not familiar with personalized video, I don't blame you. It's relatively new and exciting. But this is a way to add someone's name or picture into an actual video that gets sent out. So it creates that personal experience of that person made that video just for me, even though we both sort of know that we didn't. But it also is video, which is probably the most compelling call to action on the web today. Being at Vidyard, I'm a little biased, of course, but I certainly love video and could talk about it for hours. But essentially, they sent this personalized video out to their 19,000 folks, which talked about their brand, a little bit about what they do, and they were able to, using a tool like Vidyard, well, they use Vidyard specifically in this case, understand who was watching those videos, who was engaging with those videos, which, by the way, are super engaging in the first place because they're videos and they're personalized. And they were able to update their lead score and their lead records in HubSpot based on the engagement of who's watching those videos. So they were able to say, okay, of these 19,000, we were able to identify a certain set amount, which are what we would call either qualified or at the very minimum warm. So this proved incredibly effective. It's sort of it's a little bit ABM in the sense that it's specific hyper-targeted messaging, but when you add something like video to it, it can certainly scale, and you can, if you are looking at exploring ways to scale your ABM, that's something that they've done here. So it definitely helped. They 5 times open rates as opposed to when they were having the AEs reach out individually. So again, this is an example of personalized messaging and marketing gone right.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate that quick snapshot. That was a really interesting case study. I remember in the issue, there was some great takeaways around that, so I recommend everybody check it out. All right, so again, now you get a better sense of different ways that people are engaging and how ABM is starting to scale. The next case study that we wanted to look at was a ServiceMax. So ServiceMax actually, when you look at how it starts to get into how different elements of the programs are working, how you're engaging the sales team, some really interesting takeaways. We've covered them a few times in ABM in Action, and they were excited to have them part of this issue. So I wanted to ask Sandra Freeman to join us and cover a little bit, give more background about some of the work ServiceMax did.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Andrew. One thing I wanted to also share, we at Engage are a Vidyard customer too. So Jesse, I agree with you. We're getting 4 times on engagement on our personalized videos and that we use with Vidyard. So thank you. But I'll focus here on ServiceMax. ServiceMax had a lot of changes. A lot of internal team changes and a strategic initiative to focus on the enterprise. And so that's really the need they had. They really needed that visibility into their target accounts. They needed to align these different teams, sales, marketing, CS, and biz dev all together. And so they came to Engagio or partnered with us for really a unified view of those accounts and to orchestrate sales and marketing efforts. So we'll go to the next slide and show you exactly how. So working with Engagio, we have a unified view of all engagement, whether it's anonymous or direct, whether we're looking at intent or we're looking at direct different channels. And so it rolls up to that account level. And that's that unified visibility that ServiceMax was looking for. And it's all detailed here, I did want to say, in this great issue. Okay. And then from that unified view, let's talk about exactly how that impacted the different teams. So for inside sales, they would get a daily report that shows the activity, and they're able to prioritize their day. So inside sales, making it easier for them on the follow-up. For field marketers, with that unified view of accounts, they're able to come and develop segments also, and where different segments are in the buyer's journey. And then if they're not engaged, be able to orchestrate programs, for example, into Salesforce and a Rollworks, ad, for example, or a direct mail program that they might want to do. So field marketing was able to really identify those segments and take action. And also at the regional vice president level, having these territory views. So rolling it up for the territory and being able to use that in their forecasting meetings with their AEs. So those were the key takeaways and how ServiceMax used this, what they're seeing. These are some early results, but they're seeing key insights into the accounts. They're improving that alignment. This is a little picture on the side here of that, what they call a pod that works on key enterprise targets and improving alignment between those 4 different groups, and then streamlining the marketing efficiency like we were talking about with field marketing and driving more engagement, and then wins. So we're excited about what Pat Oldenburg, the VP of Operations and Marketing, is doing at ServiceMax with Engagio.
Awesome. Thanks, Sandra. Thanks for the visual plug of the issue there, too. That's nice to remind everybody. Again, you'll all be getting electronic versions of that issue as well. So you see some common themes and denominators here. You see a lot about targeting. You see a lot about increased efficiency, alignment. We want to ask the panelists to sort of come back in and give some more specifics there about some common learnings and some other actionable takeaways for the audience. So the first one I want to go back to is targeting. It's such a critical point. Really one of the first struggles we see of people that get into ABM or want to build on ABM is who should I target? How do I target them better? So, I wanted to go back to Jesse Miller from Rollworks. If you could add a little bit more about how you've seen clients successfully target, any suggestions you'd have for our audience around that.
Yeah, so this is like my bread and butter. I run all of our own internal ABM programs, and I use our platform to build audiences and run campaigns myself. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. The role of targeting ABM is basically everything, right? And so I've got a couple of screenshots here from within our own product. One is actually a target account list builder on the left. And on the right-hand side, we have our sort of audience builder. And so we're able to layer on several different attributes for an audience, right? So you take the domains you want to go after, you find the decision maker, and in our case, it's marketing decision makers, and then you have a bunch of intent signals that you could layer on even more on top of that to get the size of the audience smaller and more effective, essentially. So all of our customers go through this exercise. We actually have AMs that kind of walk them through the process and understand exactly who they're going after. And so that's on the audience side. That's once you actually even know who you want to go after. If you're new to your ABM journey and you're a brand new company who's getting into ABM, we have a feature within our product, and it's something that kind of makes an easy target account list for you. You could select industry, size, revenue, and it'll spit out from our database a bunch of accounts that match those criteria. So essentially, you know your ICP, you kind of fill it out in our platform, and it'll spit out a bunch of accounts that you can go and target and create audiences for. So a lot of our customers, whether they're new to ABM or they're like really experienced with ABM, they're using these features, especially the audience side, and that's how they're getting those results from, getting the right people to their site, getting people to engage meaningfully versus just bouncing off the website because they don't know why they got there. And so, I can't really stress enough how important targeting is in ABM. And I'm sure most of the others on this panel will agree that it's probably like the key starting point, at least.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jesse. So a couple of phrases you heard Jesse use, and David talked about them in the beginning. I'm assuming most folks on the line are familiar with things like TAM, which is total addressable market. Jesse talked about ICP, which is ideal customer profile. I wanted to ask David from CallRail to come back and talk a little bit. We talk about all these acronyms, but talk a little bit about how you actually brought those into the plan and what sort of impact it had. So, David, let me ask you to come back and join us.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So I had mentioned that we were really going after the advertising agency market, and advertising agencies can be a very tricky market to tie down, right? Because there are a world of different agencies out there, whether you're talking about a full stack marketing agency, a PPC agency, a design agency, brand agency. Also within the market itself, there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions towards the top of the market. There's a very low barrier to entry at the bottom of the market. So it's a very difficult market to nail down. And for us, taking a data-driven approach, that meant that we could rely on a number of different fields or data points. So whether that was NAICS codes, SIC codes, whether that was geographic location, industry, sub-industry classifications. We also relied on firmographic data, on company size, revenue, employees, and then we drill all the way down into job titles. And then that is what really gives us the idea of who we are talking to and how can we relate to these people and how can we build out relevant messaging. But the other important element in here is, as I mentioned, we needed to validate our strategic approach. So understanding how big is that market, that total addressable market, that is the key input that goes into all of our customer acquisition modeling, all of our revenue modeling. So that plays a huge role in determining what markets we're going to go into and how we're going to reach out to those people as well. And it was really that data that was the originating point of all of those campaigns.
Awesome. Thanks, David. So again, I thought Jesse and David really helped frame, targeting and hopefully give you a little more color around that, depending on where you are in your ABM journey. But obviously, once you're more effective and efficient in your targeting, you still have to be able to engage that audience. So I wanted to ask Jesse Aris from Vidyard to give us a little bit more color on what you've seen work effectively in terms of tactics and channels. And obviously, you're going to talk a lot about video, but just what you see in terms of channels and any success stories you could share there.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Andrew. So Yeah, for anyone who's not familiar with Vidyard, Vidyard is essentially a place to store your videos and distribute them, largely focused for business to business. But then the real interesting stuff is when you start to understand who's watching that video and how much of that video they're watching, and tie it back into something like your CRM or your marketing automation platform. That becomes, the only reason I mention that is that becomes extremely important as we look at how do we use video in ABM. But not just that, how do we just do ABM in general? So a lot of people consider video to be one particular channel. We don't actually look at it like that. We actually believe that video applies to all your channels. So you can add video to other channels. Don't think of it as a net new channel. Think of it as something to supplement your existing ABM tactics. But we've been doing ABM for a while. It's been working really well for us. And I think the one thing I've learned that all ABM campaigns have in common is they follow the formula of starting with connecting. You've got to make that connection. And the next step is to, once you've made that connection, okay, how do you engage with them and pique their interest? Because that's actually one of the hardest parts. The next step is very important too. That's tracking that engagement or that interest that you've been able to pull out of your prospects. And then of course the last part is to, okay, let's act on that. How are we gonna take advantage of all this great data that we have and that we've collected from all these other companies that are on the panel with us as well? So how do we do it at Vidyard? Well, we use lots of different tactics, as I mentioned, and video being one of those tactics. And we create campaigns that are extremely relevant to our audience. So we will have no problem spending maybe $5,000 to $10,000 on a video, just a video, which is part of a larger campaign for a specific target account. That's no problem, because everything you do needs to be hyper tailored to that particular account. Language and jokes that work with one account may not work on the other account, right? So make sure that you focus just solely on that account. Next step is to engage that account. And this is where I believe that video is the secret weapon for engagement. So our sales team will create personalized videos like the ones I showed you before, but they can also use a tool to make one-to-one videos. So it would be, hey, I'm Jesse. Hey, Andrew. I just wanted to reach out, see how things are going. That takes 30 seconds and is a fantastic way to break the ice at a new account or to stir up the fire at an account that's gone cold. Next step is obviously that personalization, but taking it one step further and making sure that all the content you're sending out is memorable. People get so much content all the time. They get, you can just pull up your inbox and you can see, right? All that stuff that's in there. How do you make a memorable outreach through email or direct mail? How do you create something unique where they remember your name? And yes, direct mail is excellent, but if you opened up your inbox right now and you saw in all that noise subject line that said, hey, Andrew, here's a 30-second video that I made just for you. Well, guess what? Guess which email is going to get opened? It's going to be that one. So that's how we break through the noise with video. That's how it fits into our overall ABM campaign and approach. There's so many pieces of this that I'd love to share with you folks. Obviously, this is only a 40-minute webinar. But if you do have any questions, you can reach out to me directly. But just remember, the key takeaway here is, connect, engage, track, because if you're not measuring, you're not marketing, and then act on that information.
Awesome. Thanks. I want to go back to the other Jesse to join us, because Jesse, you touched on something that's not just sort of top of funnel. So Jesse Miller, I wanted to see if you could walk us through different stages and approaches that you're seeing folks take. You're not really just advertising just to open the door at the first stage, but how are you seeing folks address different buyer stages with ABM?
Yeah, so this is actually some examples from campaigns that I'm running internally myself. I've tried to stick in a couple images of sort of the overall approach here, because, while we're saying, there's 4 stages to the sales cycle, I mean, this is very simplified as well. You got your attract stage where you're just trying to bring them to the site for the first time. You got your consideration stage where they're looking at you and other vendors to solve a problem. And then once they're kind of in an opportunity stage, you're thinking about like proposal, what content's going to be relevant at that stage in their buying journey. And eventually, we even advertise to our customer accounts with things like social validation. So if you notice here, the first ad is very generic. It's very like brand awareness. It's trying to address a pain point, engage key decision makers, no problem. It sends them to our website, to sort of like the what you can do page on our website. And then when they get there, there's a nice drift message that's tailored to that account. It says, in this example, it says, hey, ad roll, can I ask you a question? And then we kind of go through a flow of qualification questions, try and get them routed to a sales rep right away. If that doesn't happen, we're going to still keep serving ads to them. If they haven't requested a demo with us yet, we have a very like strictly defined audience and a personalized ad that will say company name, want personalized ads like this, request a demo now. So those kind of things, you're layering in some personalization, you're showing off the cool, capabilities of your product, and you're trying to get them to, request a demo, open an opportunity with the sales rep, get engaged with them. After that, what we're going to do is probably trigger a direct mail kit that says, thanks for requesting a demo. We can't wait to talk to you. Like, here's a little gift letting you know that we care about you, right? And so this could be applied to any company and anyone running ABM. And as they move down the funnel, let's say there's a proposal out, right? You've sent something over to them. They're going over it with their buying committee. They're bought in a little bit more on ABM, but they're still new to it. So, that's where we start serving ads for a guide about measuring ABM. You're not going to send that to them in the attract stage because there's a good chance they don't even know what ABM is yet. So you're waiting to serve that message when it's relevant to them, right? You want them to download that piece of content. That's going to make them confident that your company knows what they're talking about, that you can help them measure ABM once they get started. And that's going to push them along the funnel, right? All these ads, their purpose is to push someone along in their journey, right? And then once they're a customer, we want to serve them an ad. And it's pretty funny. The ad that's here is a quote from our contact at TransPay, talking about our precise targeting capabilities, sophistication in the way you can build an audience. And so we serve that to customers so that they know that they made the right choice with choosing Rollworks, right? They can go read a case study about why someone was successful using Rollworks. And, that kind of stuff, it goes a long way. I think, as we're marketing to marketers, the word of mouth is always going to be a huge, huge influence in people buying and, choosing a software provider. And so if you can see like, oh, TransPay did really well, I'm in a similar industry, or we sell to similar people, I think that this software can benefit me, you're telling a cohesive story, right? And so, the way I like to think about it is all the tools that I'm using in our tech stack, I want them to work together, right? I want the ad to lead to the landing page and then the drift experience to pop in. I want, when someone books a meeting with us, a direct mail piece to go out. And then, as they move through the funnel, my field marketer knows these are the important accounts. Let's invite them to a nice field event. And so all these channels work together, but the whole point is like, you want the message to be relevant. You want to be very focused and, direct about which accounts you're going after. You want to make that experience personalized as much as you can, like, putting their company name in the ads, for example. And overall, you're going to get better results because you're showing that you care about this account, you care about their business, and that you want to help them solve their pain points. I think that's the most important part, right? You don't want to talk about how cool your product is, what it can do. You want to tell them how your product can help them solve their problems. And I think, you do that through all the tools. And, oftentimes we have customers and prospects come to us and say, like, I just really like the way that you kind of got my attention. I like your product as well, but I want to hear about like how you guys run ABM internally and how we could kind of leverage some of those tactics ourselves. So, the world of ABM is a lot of sharing and kind of like following what each other's doing and getting success that way. And so can't really stress that enough, that you got to have like a really comprehensive and cohesive plan in place.
Great, thanks, Jesse. So you touched on going different phases of the funnel. One of the big payoffs that we're seeing from a lot of ABM case studies is better alignment with marketing and sales. It's been sort of a classic struggle in B2B. I wanted to ask Calvina from Inside View to come in and share some of what you've seen classically as some of the struggles there and how you're seeing ABM help to address that.
Yeah, I can talk about that. So alignment is and has been, a really big topic for Inside View. A lot of companies talk about targeting, engaging, and measuring. And I think we like to say, well, you can spend a lot of time on engagement, but it doesn't really matter if you don't have the right targets. So on the slide, you can see we ran a survey last year on alignment. And one of the biggest challenges is that lack of accurate and shared data on target accounts. So what are we doing at Inside View around alignment? Well, first we had to identify our own ICP. We looked at which one of our customers renewed at a high rate and also bought more from us. And so once we had the information by industry, we built out our TAM to figure out how many companies were in this market. And in terms of ABM, we focused on two main groups. One was around our large customers, our large existing customers, where we wanted to expand our footprint. And then two, we also had several named accounts where we were focused on new logos. So after determining our ICP, then we socialized these targeted accounts internally. You can imagine lots of internal meetings, lots of collaboration, and I would say not just among like sales and marketing, but also definitely looping in our customer success teams. So we gained a couple insights in this process. One, I think we learned to prioritize which accounts would go into these higher touch sequences. Initially, we thought that we would have that bandwidth to put everyone into this tier 1 group. We soon realized that this requires the most marketing muscle. So we narrowed it down to no more than 30 accounts. And I would also say this process also really established trust between the SDR and our prospects. We had a sequence where we called every touch had a give, where our SDRs would provide some sort of asset that we thought would provide value. So our SDRs could establish themselves as a consultant, and it really wasn't until that 7th touch, then we asked for a meeting. So I'd say all around, like just much greater collaboration among all teams. So I'll hand it back to you, Andrew.
Thanks for that, Kevin. So, Sandra, I wanted to ask you to come back in. I mean, obviously, with greater alignment and collaboration, there should be better measurement, better insights being shared. I wanted to see if that's what you're seeing and what some of the payoffs that's having on the accounts you're working with.
Yeah, so what I'm showing here is what we call a deal story and an actual deal over time. This actually took a year, but showing the different engagement across that time. And what you're seeing in the blue is sales engagement versus green is marketing engagement. And what I think is important about this is being able to visualize it and agreeing that this is what happened, and being able to share that and share the success. But if I dive into that a little bit more, what I wanted to share is there was a lot of management level engagement, but we needed to get the C-level engagement as well. And being really prescriptive about that with your SDRs. How do you do that? What are the things you can do? And in this case, we do what we call a door opener. And so we know that at a certain level of engagement with the right target account, we'll do this standard package. And then we can also add some personalization, some really relevant messaging, some additional gifting that we might do, and bring in that C-level engagement. So that's what you're seeing on the far right here was that group came together, the AE, the SDR, and the ABM manager, and then ran that play. So I guess the main thing I wanted to share is be prescriptive. That's like one of the key takeaways. And then share your deal story, because what happens with your reps is as they see success, they want to know how then to replicate that in their territory or for a particular account that they're thinking about. And being prescriptive with them and getting them excited really helps.
Awesome. Thank you. So you touched on sort of metrics, which is the last topic I want to end on, and it's obviously critical to all of the other areas we talked about. But ABM brings about different metrics. It brings about different approaches on measurement. David, I wonder if you could come back in and talk about some of the learnings that you've seen, takeaways you'd share around different approaches to measurement around ABM.
Yeah, so there was certainly a time in CallRail's history where we were measuring primarily on lead quantity and the number of leads coming in every month. But today we really measure based on known leads, engaged leads, marketing qualified leads, SALs, sales qualified, closed won, as well as all of the conversion rates between those stages and the average time between each stage. In addition to employing some ABM strategies, we're also a high velocity acquisition channel. And, I think this is really important, not just for benchmarking against performance goals, but it's also really important for other organizational aspects, things like staffing for the sales team, which overall you understand is going to affect acquisition costs, which then trickles into your overall marketing efficiency. So I think if you're really focused on marketing efficiency, then benchmarking on pipeline and pipeline velocity is very important.
Awesome. So great points, David. Thank you for that. So pipeline, obviously, what we're hearing and seeing is, pipeline metrics around ABM obviously become more pronounced, but more impactful. Sandra, can you add a little bit more color to what you're seeing in terms of pipeline metrics and different takeaways you're seeing around ABM metrics?
Yeah. So, David, your comments were music to my ears. Of course, we're always looking for engaged accounts and meetings and pipeline and opportunities and wins, right? But from there, how do you look at it more specifically at different stages of your journey and how accounts are moving through that journey and segments of accounts might move differently? So this is an example, what I'm showing here, of an account journey, and the accounts by stage, that stage can be customized. For example, if you're looking at the demand unit waterfall from Serious Decisions, you can operationalize these stages to match that and have accounts move through each stage depending on what makes sense for you. But exactly what David was saying, what is the velocity? What's the volume in each stage? What's the velocity? How fast are they moving through stages? And what are your conversion rates in those stages? I do have one example I thought was a real world example for me, where if I was watching conversion from meeting to opportunity, and I know what that normal rate is, and 1 month it was half of that, which is very concerning for your forecast. You got to watch that. So being able to look at that exactly and say, oh, shoot, our conversion rate is going down. That's a problem. What are we going to do about it? In that case, it's going back and saying, why aren't we converting more? What's the issue? We're holding on to these too long. Let's agree what an open opportunity should be. Let's make sure everybody agrees to it, and then get back to a place that we're happy with. And it's actually gone up from there and gotten even better by doing that. So I think the volume, velocity, conversion within each stage, and understanding how the health of your funnel is, and then improving it and optimizing it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. So really great takeaways. I want to thank all the panelists for that. We're going to go ahead and start to shift to our Q&A. So get your questions ready. We've got some good ones coming in. Quick reminder that the case studies covered in here will be available in this issue of ABM in Action, especially as we did on Conversation Changer. So definitely take advantage of that and share it with your peers. Some good reminders and other points that we're building on some of the points we covered here in the webinar. So we're going to move to Q&A. I want to thank the folks that did submit questions, and if you didn't yet, go ahead and type them in. First one we had from Julie is for Calvina. She said you touched on the concept of gives, and she asked if you could expand on that a bit.
Yeah. So any give, we basically, for SDRs, we wanted them to, as I mentioned, establish themselves as a consultant. And so any thought leadership piece that we thought would provide value. So for example, a webinar link or an article around, data management, if it applies to them, or, infographic, ebooks. And so the SDRs would have, their series of these gives, and they would add them into their sequence of emails.
Awesome. Interesting. And you use that for all your campaigns?
Yeah, we did.
Great. We had a bunch of questions come around measurement. Jesse Aris, I wonder if you could expand a bit on What specific measurement are you looking at as part of ABM? Are there people are asking about specific metrics around engagement, or do you look at time spent? Anything else that you can expand on there?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Yeah, naturally, there's quite a few questions around this. Again, we look at video as our main channel, but of course, what I'm about to say applies to everything. It's just with video, it's particularly easier to measure the engagement or the amount that somebody engaged with a video versus, say, a white paper. Not that there's not a place for those different pieces of content, but we like to create content that's easily measurable. Yeah, so engagement is a big one. Also, the ROI of your programs is a big one as well. It's actually a huge one, and we've seen it year over year. People not really understanding, being able to attribute the ROI of an ABM campaign, and even more importantly, the specific pieces of content that get you to that close. If you do get there, which hopefully you will. Almost half of the people of our customers, this is new to them, the idea of tracking the success of a particular channel in an ABM campaign, which I think is surprising, considering we're all B2B marketers. We all understand how important tracking the engagement and tracking the success of a program is, but we're still seeing that there's a huge opportunity for people not actually tracking it. The good news is, though, is that if you are tracking it, you are more likely to see better and better results year over year. So the people who we talk to who actually use video and are tracking the success of their video, so they're seeing, okay, where did this person stop watching? Or maybe they're doing the same thing on their website. They can tweak and modify and keep changing their program so that they can optimize it for that engagement. So I guess the punchline or the moral of the story is always be measuring everything, and then also think about how you can use that data, because so often we go, hey, we have a 14% engagement rate on this, or we have a 13% conversion on that. That's great, and you need that information, but think about what you're going to do with that information and how you're going to shape that into a successful ABM campaign so that those numbers continue to improve.
Awesome. Related question, Sandra, for you from Nick. He mentioned that they're kind of moving away from traditional MQLs and like demand gen type funnel metrics, and is asking what are some of the KPIs or different metrics that they could be reporting on for performance success.
Yeah, so I was going to say this was not a layup from Jesse to me because, but I wanted to expand on what you were saying about attribution. And attribution is a key metric we look at, both at the program level, the campaign level, and then the channel level. I think a good rule of thumb that's worked for me when I was at Marketo as well as here at Engagio is for every dollar that I need to generate $10 in pipeline and $3 in win. So at least for our business, that is a typical, we try and reach that, and we evaluate those campaigns, those programs, those channels based on, is it getting you that 10x for op, and is it getting you the 3x for win? And I use, I'm lucky because I get to use Engagio attribution for that, but it looks at whatever model you decide. So it could be first touch model, last touch model, equal touch, or engagement minutes, and then being able to get you those ROI numbers. You also asked about MQLs versus we actually track MQAs, which is marketing qualified accounts, and then engaged targets is another thing we look at. So we first want to know that we're engaging it's basically my pipeline that I have to drive for the SDRs. Am I giving them enough of the right people that are engaged in the right accounts, and they're engaged enough that would help them hit their forecast for meetings and then opportunities.
Awesome, thanks. Jesse Miller from RollWorks, question for you from Ken. He mentioned that they're really just starting to do ABM advertising. A was asking if you have any suggestions on what makes ABM ads perform better. You touched on like using the company name, any other tips there? And he also asked if there's any benchmarks on what kind of expectation they should get on ABM ads. Are they going to perform better than general ads or anything like that?
Yeah, so, I mean, just diving into that, I think I hinted at this before, but really the messaging that you're putting out there is going to be key to the ads that you run. So, like, what's been successful for us is we don't use like us statements. We're not talking about how cool Rollworks is all the time. We're talking about, like, how can we address the pain points of the specific persona we're going after, for example. And I think that's been really successful. I mean, and on that point too, like the actual personas we're going after, targeting messaging towards them as well. So like the ad you're serving to a CMO versus the ad you're serving to like a marketing manager, they're going to be completely different. The CMO is worried about spending efficiently, like making the most out of his budget, versus the marketer's like, I want to be able to stand up campaigns in a quick fashion. So I think that has been very successful for us. I think also like where you can personalize, do that. Like if you can stick the company name and you're confident in your data and your Salesforce or whatever CRM you're using, go with those kind of things. Like personalize it, but don't just personalize it and have a generic message that goes with it. Personalize it to that account. So if you know something about the pain point of a huge prospect that you're looking to bring on, put their company name in there, but also put like solve X problem with ABM. And make that message very, very relevant to the audience, right? And in terms of like measuring and like success metrics, display advertising always has the like click-through rates and like impressions served and clicks, and so those things are going to be important. But I think what you're looking for is engagement against accounts, and luckily we've built a lot of internal reporting within Rollworks that can show you like, how much of your target account list have you reached? How many are engaged? How many have converted on a form? And so that'll give you a more ABM style measurement approach for when you use the platform. And you're still going to want to look at those baseline metrics for display advertising, like click-through rate, because that's going to show that the message is actually relevant and people want to click through it. But what's more important when you're talking about ABM is like the coverage, the reach, how much you were able to engage, if you're able to get the right people to the website and converting on forms. You don't want like the director of IT downloading a white paper when he's never going to be the person to buy your software. And so it's a good mix of like the right message at the right time with ABM ads, sequential messaging, and then ultimately like who did you reach and what were you able to like achieve in terms of progress.
Okay, awesome. All right, we're going to take one more question because we're getting to the hour here. I want to give this one to David and Calvina. Christy in the audience said that they built their initial ABM program just on a list that the sales team put together, and she's looking for some validation or proof points on why they should do a full TAM and ICP kind of exercise. So, Calvina, let me start with you, and then maybe David can add some color to it. What do you see as the typical payoffs of actually doing the research on TAM and the exploration, sort of do it the right way?
Yeah, I think it speaks to the slide that I think David was showing, right? Like first you really need that ICP and TAM, and it all comes back to targeting. If you are not targeting the right people, then you don't really know like what that message is. And even if you have the right message to the wrong people, you're not going to have that type of payoff. And I think, David, maybe you can speak a little bit more to like the case study and how like Inside View really helped like provide that data. And especially when you go into like your partner programs.
Yeah, I think it also has a lot to do with understanding what is the size of the opportunity, right? Because you're going to be aligning a lot of resources behind going after these specific targeted accounts or targeted markets. So if you're not doing your research into the overall market, then you may be going in the wrong direction. And you may also be missing an opportunity that could be a lot larger. So I would start with the total addressable market and compare that to what you think is your ideal customer, and then see if that really aligns.
Awesome. All right. Thank you to all the panelists. I thought we had some really great insights and examples and takeaways. So I feel like the audience got a lot out of this. I want to thank you all for your time and insights today. Quick housekeeping before we leave. Reminder that the ABM in Action issue of Conversation Changers is available in the Resource Center. So go ahead and grab that, share it with your peers. Also, this session will be recorded. You'll get a link to go back and review that and share it as well. So thanks again to all of our presenters and panelists, and have a great day, everybody.